Hey, welcome back to the permission statement. For those of you who are returning followers, appreciate you. You just got here, ride with us. It's going to be an interesting one. So, I have been promising to step out there and dip into the complexity of the dynamic of this insane family that I have been tethered to for these years. And how that weighed heavy on this marriage and this family that that I worked so hard to build. Work together with my soon-to-be ex-wife. But when I met her, her brother was in prison. He was doing time for, I think it was a home invasion, um, armed robbery, home invasion type thing. Like I said, I'm still waiting for the microfilm, whatever the all the information. It's public information. It's out there. That way, I'll get a full understanding of what happened. Um, and so, for how it was relayed to me was that due it to prison, he had two daughters. Supposedly, like that, he was gonna do just one last crime, you know, and that one crime he stepped in shit and he got in a lot of trouble. And so he had two twin daughters. The mother stayed out here. She's, and I mean, the things that I've seen her do just in the, I came into the picture 2011. The two young girls are awesome girls. They're, I think they graduated from college. Um, but I did not like the parenting style of the mother. I felt like she was using the daughters as like child babysitters essentially, and to do her job as a parent, um, rather than just letting them be kids and do what they do. Like, hey, you spread your legs, you have a kid, you do your thing. Your daughters are not supposed to have to sacrifice their youth and all that stuff so that you can get it how you live with your the new guy. So he's up in prison doing his time for the home invasion, and she is out here with the twins trying to raise them. However, but like I said, they ended up going to college and doing their thing, and then so around 2020, well, I meet the wife in 2011, and she tells me part of the story that yeah he did this, and she claims that that's the reason why she got into criminal justice so that she could help people like her brother and blah blah blah. And he was always calling. He would always call. Sometimes he would call, and we were trying to go to work. We were working our friggin' asses off because we wanted to be homeowners. And he would call and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" And supposedly, I mean, she told me not long thereafter that he was on the SNY yard, which is, if you don't know, that's a sensitive needs yard. That's people who aren't on the main line no more, whether they dropped out or whatever the case may be. They can't be on the main line. And she told me some story about like the gangster people in the yard supposedly thought that he had a cell phone, or that they demanded that if they weren't allowed access to the cell phone, that they would stick his ass. So I don't know if that's a bullshit story or whatever, but dude had to go to an SNY yard. So I don't know how long into his sentence that happened or whatever. And supposedly he found God because he talked about it a lot, and religion and everything, and that he was really excited about going out there and you know converting people to Christianity and all this stuff. And that was all cool. You have expectations of people, and you hope that they come home after such a long time, but they got it through their skull that, like, yo, this don't step in shit again, because it's not cool to watch people just deteriorate inside prison, um, on long sentences like that one. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do the thing. And so he was always calling though. I need this, I need that, I want that. It was just always calling. And for those of you who know anything about inmates and convicts and stuff, they don't have no problem just being like, hey, I need this. Can you send it to me? I need it. Um, and so his mom was always paying for the phone calls and sending the packages and doing all this stuff. So she suffered the trauma of worrying about him and having to support him for all these years. Um, and his sister had to go through the trauma, and that's one less person in their family. And the twins, the daughters, had to go through not having their father there for them, and just dealing with their mother and their stepdad. And So me, I'm like this. I don't believe any of that bullshit until they come home and they put the good foot forward, until action is put forward, And so I was waiting. So he came home. He was at the halfway house. And when people first get out, it's like they're compelled to do the right thing. That's not always going to mean that they're going to do the right thing and they get sent back really quick. But he was working. He was doing good. But not long thereafter, we started noticing, I started noticing behavioral traits, like start drinking more and then drinking more excessively, then drinking and driving. There was an incident where he like came around the corner and there was a car there unexpectedly, so he had to swerve and crash into like the front of somebody's house, like the little retaining wall or whatever, and then ran. He was on parole, and going into Mexico, he started going into Mexico to go visit his family. That's not a violation. That's a new charge. Absconding like that, going to Mexico, that's not no joke. So it was just already, that was kind of just like an indicator, like, okay, because my wife would go and they would try to take my son, and I'm like, my son don't really need to see him get arrested and all that trauma at secondary, because just be patient and wait. And I know it's hard because when people want to go see family members or whatever, but it started off as going down, getting into fights down there. I think he got in a fight the first night they went down there. And the family down there, they started, oh yeah, come on down. And so he was making these trips that weren't entirely necessary, like excessive going down. One of them leads to a dang car accident where he has to be life lighted. They weren't getting Mexican insurance, which is illegal. If you go down to Mexico, you got to get that insurance, because if you have American plates and you get pulled over or you get in a car accident down there, you're in a whole lot of trouble. And I kept telling them, you need to pull over and get that Mexican insurance. Nobody listens. And so when he got in that accident, the car was totaled, and so now he owes on that car, and the car's gone, and the insurance ain't gonna cover it. And he lost the spleen, and so when he got in that accident, he couldn't go to work. And so he was getting like partial earnings, but it just wasn't enough. So I kept telling the old lady that, like, hey man, game recognized game, and I'm noticing things. And then her best friends had told me something, not that they was trying to like dime dude out to me or whatever. They were worried about him, and that's what family and friends are supposed to do. They're worried about your well-being. If they really care, they don't want you to go suffer anymore, or they don't want to see the people who love you suffer anymore. So they weren't trying to like, put him in a bad position. They were just, speaking in general. And so when I express it to my wife, like, yo, man, I'm concerned about your brother, she goes and tries to play this little big sister bullshit and puts me in this awkward position. I mean, not like I give a fuck, because if he wants to get him up, we could do that anytime. Just say when. So I wasn't even tripping, like, well, whatever, let's get it. But it was just awkward, like, yo, I'm confiding in you as a husband that I'm concerned, and she goes and just goes right over and puts me in that stupid position. But I have to say this though. Like, she said, no, I asked my brother and he said no. Yeah, of course he gonna say no. But I told her, I'm telling you, your brother is out there fucking up, man, because I could tell. I knew that he was doing shit that he shouldn't have been doing. And then she kept saying no. And so we go to I think it was the Chargers versus the Chiefs football game in Los Angeles. And while we're at the football game, I'm watching the football game with binoculars, and I look over and she's crying. They started drinking before the football game, and then they were getting hammered during the football game, and I looked over and she was bawling, crying. I was like, no, I'm looking through the binoculars, and I look over and like, hey, the Chargers are, and then she's crying. I'm like, man, what the hell's going on? And this idiot had pulled out his phone. I'm assuming maybe the conversation came up like, hey, how you gonna survive to pay the bills and blah blah blah. And this idiot goes and shows her his phone that's in her name. I mean, he paid for the phone eventually through like paying her off, but the phone's in her fucking name. And he shows her stupid ass shit that made her cry because she's concerned about her brother. Chris, you're a little bitch for that, for doing that in a phone that's in your sister's name. and out of your mama's house that did all that shit for you when you was in the Bing, that's a bitch. You're a bitch. To put that kind of stress and hardship on them, and that's selfish and childish. But to be doing that shit out of his mama's house after all that other shit happened, and that just tripped me out. So after the game, we were walking back, because it was like a 1.5 mile walk back to the hotel. They're getting drunk again. And then we get back to the hotel, and their mom was watching our son. She was drunker than drunk and passes out on the bed because she had to get up in the morning and do something for Napa County on the computer or for school or some shit. And this fool stays awake, and he's boo-hooing and talking racist shit to his mom because she's getting her back blown out by that dude who happens to be black, who was one of the drug addicts that commandeered her pad and helped facilitate that she ended up hooking up with this fool, and he was doing the old pimp shit, trying to like get out her money, trying to get control of her property. It was a dirty game. The dude was no good, don't get me wrong, but it was just insane to see that their mother, that was the choice that she made to hook up with this fool. But in the same time, it's her house, so if she wants to get smashed out from the door to the bed by this dude, that's her house. So if dude's uncomfortable about that, he should be a 40-something-year-old dude living at his mama's house. You know, it's, you know, maybe just grow up and move out of your mama's house. But that ain't the case. He was talking mad racist stuff, and right there in front of my son. And yeah, man, I kept trying to wake up my spouse, but she was just passed out drunk. Like, she was out snoring and shit. And so yeah, that was just like a push too far, man. And so I tell her the next day, like, yo, you got to get your brother off our phone account, man, because she was arrested for the very things that this fool's doing on a phone in her name. And it just never got through to her that, like, hey, if these people are doing this kind of shit, then it's just like they need to be put at a distance. You know, use that love that they claim to have for you to compel them to do the right thing. Okay, if you really love me, then don't be doing this bullshit. But a bitch that goes and does all that shit, hits an SNY yard, and then comes out and goes and does that shit on a phone that's in his sister's name, out of his mama's house that took care of him for all that time, and puts them at risk, and then puts them at risk of being hurt by seeing him suffer if that ends up being the case, or potentially getting jammed up. Because if you're doing stupid shit, now pay attention, folks. A lot of people are really stupid. They think they could just say and do shit on the phone and blah, 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 and it ain't for nothing. And that's what this idiot was trying to explain to us, like as if we didn't know no better. And look, if that phone gets hit, tagged, pinched, lit up, or whatever, whoever's phone name the phone is in, when they go to do the warrant and everything, that's who they can come question if they want to. And if you lie to them, then even if you didn't commit no crimes, just by lying to them, then you can be charged for that, for obstruction. So you're letting some stupid fuck be on your phone line. You give them a phone and they're out doing tranza on that phone. The warrant, when they go do the warrant, like if they do some stupid shit and that phone is lit up, they're gonna come talk to you if they have to. And if you lie and be like, well, whose phone? Who has possession of this phone? Well, I would. As soon as you lie, boom, you tag now. They're gonna get you. So, what kind of a shitbag? I love you. I love my little sister. Shut the fuck up, man. If you did, you never would have done that shit. And so, that's the kind of stuff I've been having to deal with. And instead of her holding them accountable, she always makes up excuses for these cats, man. And that's just brother one. I'm gonna go through everybody in this little squad of people that I've been having to deal with, and why I was so adamant that, like, hey, hold your people accountable, because my family members or friends, they get like one chance and that's it. Bam, space. Stay the fuck away from our kid. My biological mom, she did one thing to my wife and my son. I ain't talked to her since, and I have no intentions. She could call me on her deathbed and I'd have nothing to say with her. Not to say that all the shit that she put me through as a kid isn't a contributing factor, but that was like, bam, that was it right there. You put me through enough shit, you ain't put my wife and son through all this other crap. But there's no reciprocity with that with my spouse. She has one standard for herself and her people, and a complete different standard for everybody else. The permission statement. Rock with me.